Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chanad Shiklosh. I'm the Associate Director of the Institute for Regional and International Studies, National Resource Center, IRIS-NRC. We are the lead campus partner here for the Pulitzer Center Campus Consortium, and part of the Campus Consortium is this reporting fellowship opportunity for students, undergraduates and graduates alike. I'm going to pass over to Libby in a moment. I just wanted to introduce Essie Lenchner, who is Assistant Director in IRIS-NRC, and Rachel Hale, who was the 2024 Reporting Fellow for UW-Madison. So Libby, I'll pass over to you and you can take it from here.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. Sorry, I think I'm there now. My camera cut out for a second, but hello, everyone. Thanks, Chanad and Essie, for helping us set up this info session, and thanks, Rachel, for being here to share a little bit about your experience with the Pulitzer Center Fellowship. As Chanad said, my name is Libby Moeller. I'm the Fellowship Program Manager at the Pulitzer Center. And how it's going to go today is I have a slideshow for you guys that about 10 to 12 slides talking about the basics of this opportunity, the timeline, the work that you could produce as a fellow. And then we're also going to hear from Rachel about her project that she pursued last year with the support of the Pulitzer Center Fellowship. Rachel has some slides for us as well. And then at the end, we will have, I think, plenty of time for questions. So if you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat as we go, or you can save it till the end and come off mute and share it then. But that said, I will go ahead and get started here. I always begin with this first important question: what is the Pulitzer Center? We are a nonprofit journalism and education organization. We have an office based in Washington, D.C., but our staff is very global and based all around the world at this point. I myself am based in D.C., and that's where I'm zooming in from today. But what you're seeing now on the screen is our mission statement. And that mission centers on championing the power of stories to make complex issues relevant and to inspire action within our audiences. Another important question: what is this Pulitzer Center Reporting Fellowship? This is going to be an opportunity for one student from your university to tell an underreported story and gain really valuable journalism experience. If you're the winner of the fellowship, you will receive a stipend of $5,000 that can be used to cover any costs related to the reporting of your project. So things like the cost of a flight to travel to your destination, the cost of food, taxis or Ubers, maybe you need to work with a translator, anything you need in order to complete this project. You also get to join our Pulitzer Center network, which includes all of the professional journalists who we've supported over the years, and all of the alums of this program at the University of Wisconsin specifically, and amongst all of our other campus partners. We've been facilitating the fellowship for more than 10 years, and I believe our partnership with your university started in 2020. So we've had a few really amazing, successful projects from your school specifically. You also have the opportunity to broaden the reach of your reporting and the impact through various outreach events and opportunities that we organize at the Pulitzer Center. So at Pulitzer, all of our reporting is going to be broken down into at least one of these 5 focus areas. But you'll find if you start exploring our website and the various stories that we support, it's very common for our reporting to intersect with multiple of these areas. So those areas being global health, human rights, climate and environment, information and artificial intelligence, and peace and conflict. This is our most recent cohort of reporting fellows. This is our 2024 group. And the way that we form each cohort each year is we have around 40 or so partners within our Pulitzer Center Campus Consortium network. Wisconsin is just one of those partners. Other partners include other state universities. We also partner with smaller liberal arts colleges, community colleges, HBCUs, schools of public health, schools of journalism. There's a ton of variety in terms of the background of our reporting fellows. And then this graphic is showing in 2024, the various places where our reporting fellows ended up traveling to report. So as you can see, we have a few stories based here in the US, but a lot of our fellows do take advantage of that stipend to travel abroad to a place they've been before or maybe somewhere new and tell an international story. In addition to this being a valuable professional experience, we do also like to think of, being a reporting fellow also means joining a community. A really big aspect of that community building is this photo here in the middle. Every year we host an event called Washington Weekend, which is exactly as it sounds. It's a weekend-long event held in Washington, D.C. We bring all of our fellows from that year together. You get to share your work. You get to meet all of your fellow fellows. There are some networking opportunities, some fun dinners. It's a really rich weekend, and I think definitely leads to lasting connections between our fellows, even after the opportunity ends. This is a photo of Rachel presenting about her project back in October. And then another cool thing about this year was our alum speaker at one of our dinners at Washington Weekend. His name is Lawrence Andrea, and he was our first ever reporting fellow from the University of Wisconsin. So he's now living in DC, and I think working as a national or a Washington correspondent for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. So it was really cool to have him back and give a little keynote speech during the dinner as someone who has already been in the reporting fellow's shoes. I'm going to play a short video for you guys. This is our Washington Weekend highlights video from our most recent event. So it's going to give you an idea of the types of stories that people are reporting on with the help of the fellowship. You'll also get more of an idea of what the event is like and yeah, just what you can take away from this experience.
Everyone is gathered here at the Washington Weekend to report on their stories and where they went and how it went for them, and also to meet a lot of the Pulitzer Center staff members as well. A lot of these people are meant to be our mentors, our tutors, and just kind of hearing other people's stories is a blessing.
Fishing, hunting, and strong ties to nature have long defined the culture of Greenland's Inuit people, but that is all being undermined by the rapidly changing environment.
Their stories must be told. Their strife, their survival, resilience, and hope. But they need platforms such as this.
I couldn't think of a better program to show students from all different disciplines and majors what it is to use critical thinking skills, to be able to network, to be able to build relationships, and to be mentored by some of the best reporters.
This is an evening when we celebrate you. It is your unique blend of compassion and tenacity and devotion to the craft of journalism that will make a lasting impression for generations to come.
Doing this work, this real human-to-human craft of listening and understanding and loving has never been more important, either for our society or ourselves.
While it was a story that was personal and I had a lot of links to it, the Pulitzer Center helped me in many ways, primarily advising. the future prospects of it, like it made me very hopeful and passionate about the project.
Sometimes your perspective gives you very different insights, so I would encourage journalists to use their backgrounds in how they approach certain stories. It is always helpful and makes it much more special.
Very important that we do report on these types of crises, but the lens that I think needs to be shared is actually one of resilience and strength in this community.
My interest in this stems from restorative justice and the pillar of restorative justice that the community should be a part of finding solutions.
Yes, now is time for our scavenger hunt.
My favorite and most impactful part about Washington Weekend, I think, definitely has to be just connecting with my fellows. Connecting with them on personal and professional ways has just been so fulfilling while being here.
The Pulitzer Center really opened my eyes, or this experience as a whole, as to how big the world is, really, in a sense, in terms of the possibilities of journalism. It expanded my view on how big my stories can really be. And I feel like this really, opened the door for me.
This weekend has truly shown me the power that student journalism has, and the things that young people are thinking about are some of the most important pressing things, and when they're given the tools to sort of turn their thoughts into ideas, turn their thoughts into stories, change can actually happen. And that sort of impact is not insignificant.
So back to the slides here. If you are interested in applying for the reporting fellowship, the first step, of course, will be to complete the application. And at the University of Wisconsin, that application is going to be due by March 21st, 2025. So still about a month left to be thinking about the type of story you want to tell, and yeah, just start brainstorming those ideas. The most important part of your application is this 250-word proposal description. This is where you let us know, what story are you trying to tell? What is your angle? Why is it important? Yeah, just really convincing us of the underreported story that you want to pitch and have produced. You'll also include a budget or how you intend to spend the $5,000 stipend, along with some work samples and clips, some references, your resume, and then some other application questions as well. So once we receive all of the applications, the Pulitzer Center Review Committee works along with our partners at Wisconsin to select that final reporting fellow, and that person will then attend our virtual program orientation and onboarding meetings, which are set to happen in early June of 2025. One thing that I think is really kind of unique and beneficial about the fellowship program is we pair every single one of our fellows with a professional journalist advisor. So this is going to be someone who should be either familiar with the area of the world or the country that you're going to travel to, or just kind of familiar with your general topic or story focus. And then the reporting process begins. Most of our fellows do choose to travel sometime in the summer, June, July, or August. It's not required. It just, if you're, a student still in school, it's usually the best time to go. But we do, we want to be flexible, and we can work with you if you have a proposal that's more suited to, travel in the fall or winter. So in terms of the work that you will produce as a result of the fellowship, there are a few main requirements. So no matter what, everyone is going to have a central story, like a big story. But the shape that can take, it is definitely up to you. Most of our reporting fellows do end up, they do end up writing just like a long form article most often. That's, I would say, the most popular choice, but We've also had students produce short documentaries or podcast series, so that's definitely also an option. I also, or another thing you need just somewhere in your project is some element of multimedia. So for those fellows who choose to write a long form article, let's say, a lot of times they fulfill that multimedia requirement through a series of photos that just kind of go along with the article. But again, video or audio, or if you have a different creative idea, that's, also totally fine. The last thing is something called a field note. I always describe field notes as personal reflections on the reporting process. So a lot of times these are written from the first person point of view. And quite often our reporting fellows will focus on questions like, what is a challenge that I faced during my reporting process? Is there anything I learned about myself? Were there any like notions I had that were challenged? Just kind of anything you want to reflect on in a personal way as a complement to those journalistic pieces of your project. So all of this work, no matter what, has a guaranteed home on the Pulitzer Center website, but you're also more than welcome if you're interested to pitch your story to other news outlets. So this slide is just giving some examples of some places where reporting fellows have published within the past few years. Again, it's not a requirement to publish elsewhere, but if you are interested in taking on that effort, our Pulitzer Center team is definitely supportive of that, and we don't restrict you to only publishing with us or anything like that. Before we go to questions, I think we're going to hear from Rachel next. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and stop my screen sharing and I'll pass it off to you, Rachel.
Sure, thanks so much. I'm so excited to be here, and this was such a fulfilling experience for me. I recognize some familiar faces, but for those who don't know me, I graduated from UW-Madison in 2024, studied journalism and political science, and was involved in the Daily Cardinal there. For me, this experience was something that was so different from anything I'd had the opportunity to previously do in journalism, and I'm definitely here as a resource for people who have questions or want to hear more after this. For now, I'm going to go in and share the presentation that I gave at Washington Weekend to give people a better idea of what that can look like. Let's make sure that everyone can see my screen. Let's see if... I want this to... can everyone see the speaker notes? I want this to just show the like normal slide. Bear with me.
For now, yeah, we're seeing the speaker notes.
Bear with me one moment.
No worries.
Okay, now can everyone see?
It's still showing the notes.
Okay. Wait. Share.
It looks like you shared a specific open window. But
how about now?
Yeah, now it looks right.
Great. Yes. Okay. So my project focused on descendants of the Spanish Inquisition who worked to reclaim their Sephardic heritage in Spain. This was not where my initial project was placed, but I pivoted here. And so one thing I would recommend to everyone is that while you're in the process of coming up with your proposal, make sure that you check in with our school's safety team to make sure that it's a viable location for you to go and report this here, because you wouldn't want that to be a reason that your proposal couldn't be chosen. Okay, how do I, oh, here we go. Okay, so Sephardic Jews are Jews who came from the Iberian Peninsula. In 1492, some 200,000 Jews were expelled from that area during the Spanish Inquisition. The Jews of that period were heavily influenced by Muslim rule, including through their Judeo-Spanish language known as Ladino and their cultural customs and architecture. They fled and created new Sephardic spheres in Greece, Morocco, Turkey, and other parts of the Mediterranean, North Africa, and Eastern Europe. So this was what my project centered on, was this idea of reclamation and, 500 years later, how descendants of the people during the Inquisition were thinking about their Sephardic heritage and Jewish identity. Okay, there we go. I was able to go to Spain for 4 weeks. I was in the rare situation that because I graduated in May, I was able to be there longer. So that enabled me to take time to go throughout Spain. I will say most people's projects are within 2 weeks, usually, especially if you're on a school year calendar. I had the opportunity to be there during some of the Jewish holidays. So this was a photo from a Reform community in Barcelona. And the first main idea in my project was to think about Spain's 2015 citizenship law, which enabled descendants of those expelled during the Spanish Inquisition to reclaim their citizenship. And this story is kind of about the shortcomings that the law had 10 years after it was put into place. This is, a photo from one of my interviewees who had helped draft the law. And this was a quote from someone who had moved to Madrid from Mexico after receiving the citizenship. These are all my photos. I also, for my multimedia component, worked on a photo gallery, but there's the opportunity to do podcasts or videos, that type of thing. Another one of my stories, and this will end up actually being my main one, focused on Ladino. Some people might be familiar with Yiddish, the language that Ashkenazi Jews speak. Ladino is the language that Jews from Spain spoke. And though it's not regularly spoken in Spain and hasn't been for centuries, this language spread throughout North Africa and Eastern Europe and parts of the Mediterranean. And so I focused on the resurgence of this language and how people are continuing to preserve it. These are some photos from one of the museums in Spain that I went to and of someone singing Ladino there. And this is another quote from someone whose father was a native speaker of the language. And then my last story that I focused on was in Mallorca, which is an island off the coast of Spain. There's a really unique Jewish history there. In the rest of Spain, when the Jews were expelled, they were forced to assimilate or go elsewhere. But in Mallorca, because it was this geographically isolated island, you can actually trace 500 years back of the exact Jews that were converted through their last name. So there's only 15, surnames that can be traced 500 years back. And that's what this photo is on the left. It's someone who has a family tree with all of the names of these Jews. So converso refers to Jews that were forced converted, but Shweta referred specifically to the Jews on this island who were converted. So for a long time, they did not feel that they fit into the Jewish community or the Catholic community. And I was able to travel to Mallorca and spend time with a lot of these Jews. I don't speak Spanish, so I used part of my budget to work with an interpreter, and that's definitely something that you should think about as you're within your budget, is how much time you're going to need if you're going to be conducting some of your interviews in another language. This is a photo from someone who was a tour guide in Mallorca and a map of the old Jewish quarter in Mallorca. Geography and culture were two ideas that were really fundamental to my reporting. I spent a lot of time just trying to get to know people, and in some cases having conversations that didn't end up in my story, but that helped me build trust with my community. And in my photos, I also tried to document different aspects of Jewish life in Spain. On the left here, these are Granada's last remaining Orthodox Jews. You have a synagogue in the middle in Sevilla, and then on the far right, an example of what would have been traditional Sephardic clothing. And same thing with, also architecture. I was able to see a lot of the Islamic influence on the architecture in Spain. And that ended up being one of the most fulfilling things, to get to go to some of these synagogues that are some of the oldest in the world. And again, seeing that Christian and Muslim influence here. And I was also able to focus on preserving Jewish traditions through my reporting. So like I said, I was there over the course of some holidays, and it was really interesting to see how local communities observed these. And so that's the end of that. I'm going to stop share, but I'll talk about a little bit more. I went in having the idea to do 2 or 3 main stories. That was because I had a full month to be in Spain, and I was able to stretch that budget by staying in hostels and doing that. But plenty of people, maybe they are initially from the country that they reported in, or they have a friend there who they can stay with. Or if you only have 10 days that you're going to be there, most people have one story that they're focusing in on. So I had a little bit more flexibility than most people would have. But for me, it was a really wonderful experience. And I'm also going to drop in the chat here, this is an extended version of my field field note, just to give you an idea of how I reflected personally on my experience. And you'll see all these field notes, on the site from different people's projects. For me, beyond reporting, it was a really exciting way to think about my own personal identity in a different way, because I'm not Sephardic, my family's not from Spain, but I am Jewish. And so this caused me to reflect a lot on my upbringing. And I think for me, it was one of the most pivotal experiences of my young reporting career, getting to go to Washington weekend. We got to connect with so many people with different ideas. They all brought so much to their project, whether they spoke a second language or were an international student. And as you saw in that photo earlier, we even got to hear from Lawrence Andrea, who was a former UW-Madison fellow. I also had worked with him at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel and got to sit next to him. So always fun to see a fellow Badger, and he gave a Badger shout out there. So that was a lot of fun. And I really can't recommend this experience enough. And I'm definitely happy to be here as a resource for questions.
So much, Rachel. I'm glad your Washington weekend presentation got a second use as well. I'm going to share my screen one more time just before we go to questions, because I want to show a couple of relevant things here on our Pulitzer Center website. So to get to our website, we're just pulitzercenter.org. You can also Google Pulitzer Center and we should come up pretty quickly. But the first page I wanted to show is each of our campus partners has their own university page. So this is where we link to all of our former fellows from your school, also their stories, projects, and any events we've hosted on campus. So definitely take a look there and familiarize yourself with what other UW students have done. The next page is our Reporting Fellow Stories homepage. This is where all of our reporting fellow work ends up. So if you are interested in the fellowship, I always recommend kind of perusing through a couple of pages of those stories. Again, getting an idea of, the types of stories that are possible with the fellowship. Another good brainstorming page is our focus areas page. I mentioned earlier that we have these kind of 5 big focus areas. When you click on one of these focus areas, it also breaks it down into even more specific subtopics in case you're looking for, even more specific inspiration. So as you can see, our climate and environment focus area breaks down into these more specific topics. So definitely give those a look. And then lastly, our Reporting Fellowship homepage. Just a lot of interesting information on here. You can read all about our most recent cohort of campus reporting fellows. We have some testimonials, links to bios, that story page, and some resources. And then down here, we also have all of our Washington weekend content linked if you're interested in learning more about that event and yeah, seeing photos and stuff like that. But as I said, I do want to make sure we have time for questions. So I'll end with this slide. I wanted to share this email address where you can reach our team at the Pulitzer Center. It's reportingfellows@pulitzercenter.org. So feel free to jot that down. If you think of questions, later on, once this Zoom has concluded, you can always reach out to us at that email. And then I believe this QR code takes you to that reporting fellowship homepage that I showed a couple of seconds ago. So yeah, bookmark that, return to it later. I definitely recommend exploring our website. Yeah, there's tons of helpful resources on there, and the Pulitzer Center also does a lot apart from this fellowship. So if you're interested in following any of our social media or being up to date on any of the in-person or virtual events that we host, that's a great place to find all that information. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing. And yeah, I'm open to any questions. I'm sure Rachel is also open if y'all have any specific questions for her. I did see one question that was already in the chat, which was, do disability topics fall into this fellowship? And I would say yes, definitely. there's been lots of Pulitzer Center related reporting. I think you'll find it's hard to find something that doesn't fall into one of our focus areas, honestly. The main thing we just don't really do at the Pulitzer Center is breaking news. We're more focused on these kind of in-depth enterprise evergreen projects. So as long as it's not breaking news, there's usually a way to make it work and a place that it fits in under one of our focuses.
So I'd say folks feel free to add a question in the chat, or you can raise your hand with the raise hand function. And if no one's speaking, you can also just unmute yourself and ask a question.
I have a question. So I know, Rachel, you touched a little bit on this like aspect of building trust, which is obviously so important. And so I wanted to ask like about your pre-reporting process before you went to Spain, and then also like maybe Libby, just maybe more generally what the general experience with fellows is when it comes to pre-reporting to sort of build that trust.
Yeah, I think pre-reporting is, so many people advised me to do as much of that as I could before I got there. And I had the flexibility of being there for longer than a lot of people. So that enabled me to kind of make changes as I went. But especially if you're on a tighter deadline where you're there for 10 days, I would almost think of it as like having your story half baked and you're going in to fill in some more details, get some quotes and adjust as needed. But that pre-reporting is everything. I think I sent more than 200 emails before I left, and I had a spreadsheet where I documented everyone I knew and who else they knew. And I had a lot of conversations with people that did not turn into stories, but were just helpful for building trust, because then that person introduced me to someone else in the community, especially if you're going to somewhere that you haven't traveled before. It was really helpful for me to get a better feel for where I should actually be going, because when I thought about Spain as a whole, it was very overwhelming. And initially, I did not have Mallorca on my list of places I needed to travel to, but I eventually had 5 or more people tell me that I needed to go there to do that story. And if I hadn't done that pre-reporting, it would have been a lot harder to figure out, as you go. And people tend to be very open to like having these calls, if you explain that I was advised last year, like while you're in the process of making your proposal, if you want to, you could even have some like on background calls with people just to get a better idea of if there's enough of a story there, or like if this is something where there does need to be more coverage, or how you can differentiate yourself from past news reporting in that place.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I think I think everyone kind of approaches pre-reporting differently, but I can speak to, I guess, like what I like to see on an application regarding pre-reporting. I think it can only be helpful to your project to kind of put some initial feelers out and like Rachel said, be sending kind of like intro emails or doing these calls on background, just seeing like, hey, I'm seeking funding for this project. If I receive it, it would involve me traveling to X place in X month. Would you be open to speaking with me if I were to receive that? Or like, could we chat for like 5 minutes and, maybe expand it further if I win this grant and then I'm in your destination? Because it can be kind of a worrisome sign, I guess, if we see an application that doesn't really show signs of even having like thought about the specific type of people you want to talk to for this, or the specific resources you're going to reach out to. Because then kind of a question that comes to our mind is like, oh, well, I wonder, they have this great idea in mind, but they haven't named any like kind of specific communities they're going to focus on, or even like specific names. Will they actually be able to get in touch with these people? Do they even want to talk to a journalist? Stuff like that. Does that answer your question? Or I'm happy to take any follow-ups as well.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you so much. I have one more question, but if someone else has one, I can hold it.
I think I go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I just wanted to I know sometimes when you're in the field doing this reporting, like your idea of the story sort of changes. So I wanted to ask how binding the original story pitch you submit with the application is, and then sort of how fellows can work with the Pulitzer Center to adapt or revise the original reporting plan as the story sort of changes in the field.
Yeah, that's a great question, and definitely something that that people run into from time to time. Um, we kind of go into it knowing that there's a huge possibility that at minimum your angle might change a little bit, because when you get to the field and you meet people you didn't even know they existed, and you're hearing that, oh, I thought like this thing was going to be the most important aspect of the story, but as I'm talking to the people that actually live here, it's becoming clear that this is like what the story really is. Like this is what's really on their minds. And the most pressing thing that I need to focus on. That happens quite a lot. That's super normal. And we're open to that happening. We're also like your advisor is available for those questions, or like I'm part of a 3-person team, like we're available as well. Also the broader Pulitzer Center team, we try to kind of connect our reporting fellows with other members of our team if they could be useful. We have a lot of former journalists and editors who are on staff at the Pulitzer Center. Rachel had a bigger pivot that was like a little different, but that I can't fully remember. I don't remember if it was like safety travel concerns or what happened. Sometimes that happens. That's more rare, but we also work with that. Like obviously, Rachel was still able to pursue a really great project, different from, what she had originally envisioned. But we definitely appreciate when fellows do stay in touch with us about that. We've had a couple of instances throughout the years where a fellow will be in the field and then they're like, oh, actually, this is more interesting to me. And then they never really touch base until they're turning in their stories. And then we kind of say like, whoa, 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 that's not really a journalistic story anymore. Or that doesn't really, fit what the fellowship is aiming for. So in short, we can definitely work with pivots, and active communication is appreciated. And we just know that it might happen. It's something we can deal with. Shanad, did you want to add something to that?
Yes, at the UW end, we do have an international safety and security officer with whom you can consult if there are any issues related to where in the world you might want to be going. It's always worth checking in if there are any concerns. You can also reach out to me if you have any questions about the region of the world you might be looking at, and if there are any safety or security issues, which frankly in this day and age that changes from moment to moment. So it's worthwhile doing that. I did also want to just make a couple of comments about at our end, how we would evaluate the reporting fellow applications. This year's campus consortium was put together with a nod to a larger UW initiative called RISE. I don't know if you've heard of that. And I can't actually remember what RISE stands for. It's Wisconsin Research, Innovation, and Scholarly Excellence. This was the Chancellor's big proposal, big initiative. And the themes around which RISE works include artificial intelligence, RISE Earth, which is environment. And so these sort of overlap with the themes that Libby was showing us from the Pulitzer end. There's a third one, which is RISE Thrive, which, if I understand correctly, relates to health, particularly study of the health span. One other thing to keep in mind is that because we are the Institute for Regional and International Studies, we exclusively accept proposals that relate in some way to global, international, regional, or cross-regional proposals and projects.
I'm gonna quickly answer a question in the chat here that I saw earlier, that maybe Essie and Shanad, you might want to speak to as well. But the question is if first-year students are allowed to apply for the fellowship. From our Pulitzer Center perspective, we're open to that. I can't remember though, every once in a while, our university partners have different rules. So yeah, I'll let them chime in.
Yes, we would accept. Freshmen are allowed, yes, to apply.
And then the second part of that, I don't know if we've had a first year student from UW. We have at other Pulitzer Center campus partner schools. I'll definitely say it's a bit more rare. Like I'll be transparent about that just because experience is something that we do take into account when we're reviewing the applications, but it has happened. I would not discourage you in any way. And I know that like many fellows who have won the fellowship over the years, it wasn't their first time applying. So I would recommend, trying it out and getting a feel for the process, and you might win the fellowship. But if not, I think it'll still be good experience in putting together a project proposal and yeah, just really coming up with an idea you're passionate about. And then if the other question about has a non-journalism major won it, I think we have had people outside of the journalism school at UW win the fellowship because it's been housed in like different campus departments over the years. And it's also a lot of our Pulitzer Center campus partners don't offer journalism majors or journalism classes. So we do have a lot of folks in the cohort each year who aren't journalism majors and who are having more of a first time experience with journalism. That's where the support of your advisor can be really helpful in answering, and the support of our team as well.
I'd actually say that, I mean, initially our campus consortium was established in part by the J School here. In more recent years, the J School has stepped back. So we would encourage students from any major, any discipline to apply. J School students may have a certain advantage because they might know how to pitch stories, might have the techniques down. But certainly if you're concerned about that, you can reach out to Rachel, it sounds like, and Rachel can guide you through how to pitch a story and how to propose, put in a compelling proposal.
Evan, I saw you've had your hand up.
Yeah, I am currently classified as continuing education, but I'm waiting to get into the master's degree. Will that be an issue that I have to resolve, or will I have to wait until next year?
That Essie and Shanad, I might defer that to you.
Not actually come across this before. I think you'd basically be an incoming graduate student.
Yes. Like I'm an unusual case because I had to do my undergraduate while I was fighting recurrent tumors and going through surgeries and radiation treatment constantly. Not a preferable way to do undergraduate school, if you ask me, but.
I know I think from the Pulitzer Center perspective, where in terms of like enrollment and like when someone is coming in, we're always happy with what our campus partners decide. So I think from our point of view, that would be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there is sort of a UW affiliation there, you are a student, you will be a student.
I'm teaching a journalism class. I have a journalism background too.
Yeah, a lot of times we often have, I think, graduating seniors to do the so they like win the fellowship, but then they're no longer enrolled at the university and they still complete the fellowship. So yeah, it sounds like Essie is saying that you all can keep in touch and maybe get that figured out over email.
I'll try and find.
I'll put Chanad's email there, just if that's okay with you, Chanad, since we have that listed.
You're right. Well,
But yeah, I think email would be a better way for us to give you a more thoughtful answer.
Yeah, thanks.
I see a question in the chat about we're asked to show 2 to 3 recent samples of our work. What exactly are the samples the Pulitzer Center is looking for? Yeah, great question. The work samples, it's always kind of a range. If you have written journalistically, like if you've written for a campus newspaper, if you've had an internship, or if you've freelanced or something, those could be great samples to share. But if you're not coming from a journalism background, we've also had applicants share like research papers that they've written. I would say if you're sharing a paper, if it's like incredibly long, to be transparent, we might not read all of it, but if you want to share like a strong selection from a longer paper, or if you have a personal blog where you've done some writings, all of that would be great. The other thing I'll add is that if you're pitching a project where multimedia has a heavier focus, I would encourage you, like if you're saying, I want to do a photo heavy project, I would encourage you to include some photo samples as your work samples. Same thing goes with video or audio-led projects. Because even though the fellowship can be a great time to like build on skills, we tend to be a little bit more wary if, like, let's say someone wants to pitch like a 30-minute documentary, but they've never done filmmaking before. That can be kind of a heavy lift. So definitely suit your work samples to the project you're pitching if possible. Another frequent question that comes up around that is, do I have to have written previously about the thing I'm pitching? Do I have to have previously reported on it? And the answer is no, you do not have to have like previously done writing or reporting on your topic. Sometimes people do use the fellowship as a way to expand on a project they've previously focused on, but it's not a requirement at all. Sammy, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was also going to ask about the sort of binding nature of the application, whether or not you guys frequently see fellows who, realize that they're not able to fully, execute their original pitch. And I was just wondering if on your end, when you're reviewing the applications and you see that there is a potential for that issue to arise, whether or not that dampens the applicant's chances of winning the fellowship.
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely. And I also like Chinad or Essie, if you want to add anything from like when you guys do the first look at the applications. I can speak to at the Pulitzer Center what we think about, but I'm definitely thinking about like doability when I'm reviewing applications. And that ties into things like issues of access. Like, are you going to be able to access the people you're thinking about involving in your story? Is there a safety concern? We really try to just recommend from the very, very start, be thinking about safety before you delve really into this project, because it's just always a huge bummer when a really great, strong proposal like gets all the way to the end and sometimes this is unforeseeable if, like conditions change on a dime, which does sometimes happen, and I would consider that a different category. But let's say you're looking right now at somewhere that like the State Department is listing as a level 4, like do not travel. I really encourage against pitching anything like that, because we'll just have to say no, because we just can't take that risk when safety is concerned. And yeah, just overall, we're hoping that the idea that you're putting forward in your application is one that you truly believe you can do, you know, barring unforeseen circumstances or random events that may happen that are out of everyone's control. And that should be part of your brainstorming and pre-reporting process. That's why that pre-reporting can be so helpful, because you get an idea, you know, if you contact 30 people and they all leave you on red or something, that can be a sign of, oh, okay, maybe this isn't the right thing to pursue because no one's going to talk to me. But if you're doing that pre-reporting and starting to hear back, I don't know, that just kind of builds your confidence in the fact that you can get this done and make it happen. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
But I think at our end, there are certain things that when we evaluate the proposals, we're looking for compelling proposals, things that fit nicely into our own, let's say, thematic priorities, and that's available from our website too. But now I've also indicated that we're looking at certain other. We may have give some preference to proposals that deal with the RISE initiative issues or themes. I find that when we meet with Pulitzer Center, that's when I'm surprised by some of the other things that we need to consider. You know, and one of the things is I think sort of how whether a story or a proposal is underreported or not. So at that point, if you're selecting between sort of really strong, I think let's say 3-4 really strong proposals, is there one that sort of is more underreported, less reported? Is it something sort of dynamic? Is it a new angle? Is it which we don't generally think about, because I don't know that for sure. Pulitzer Center does. Our colleagues there will know, you know, if it is an underreported story. And I think sometimes it's also Pulitzer Center who draws our attention to potentially issues related to safety. So that's the other thing. But as I said, I think we're becoming better at communicating that to applicants. And certainly do, as I said, reach out to either us or to the International Safety and Security Office here in the International Division if you do have concerns about the location of your project.
I also always recommend when you're thinking of these great ideas, again, visit the Pulitzer website and just kind of do a search and see, have we covered that idea already? Every once in a while, we'll get pitches that are like, literally no one is talking about this. And then we'll have, you know, supported a project the other month talking about that exact thing. So, and that's always a little awkward. So, when you're brainstorming, use the Pulitzer website for like inspiration, and also just, you know, double checking that we haven't covered that exact specific thing before. And there's a lot that we haven't covered, so don't let that discourage you.